I'm set for all those things. Whatever challenges I have, I can do that. But if
Right.
today I don't have that stamina, I will not be able to do any of those things. So BPM is all about you have set up yourself to a bit of a maturity.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers. And in each of these episodes, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with different BPM professionals and practitioners, those that are currently working in organizations or working with organizations to help them adopt and implement business process management. And it can come in many different shapes and sizes, depending on the where the organization is at, their process maturity level, what they're really requiring. So I think these conversations, it's really interesting to get a deep dive and a great perspective into what various organizations are doing and how different BPM practitioners approach BPM. So today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Manish Jairath. Now, Manish is currently a senior manager at Medibank, but has also been a BPM manager at Vodafone Australia and also a business transformation consultant at NBN. So a nice diversity of experience there. I'm really excited for this conversation. Manish, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Daniel, for the lovely introduction, and thank you for having me.
And what we might do to begin with, just so the audience has a bit of a grid and context for who you are and that background that I've just touched the surface on. Maybe you can talk to us about where the interest for BPM first began, and then take us on a journey leading up to what you're doing today.
Sure, Daniel. Yeah, it's a very interesting question to go on the background. Makes me a bit nostalgic. So I started my career as a coder. So I'm an engineer. I started my career as a coder, saying, "Yeah, let's build some amazing applications." But when I actually started doing that, I found it a bit boring because you're just siloed on one particular piece of it, and I was always had this business mindset and focusing more on how business generates revenue and how does the business model work.
Right.
So God let me move my career in that direction. So I did my MBA, and then fortunately I started working for a consulting company in a practice which was called BPM. So it was a business process management practice where they used to go to different client sites, and we used to implement different parts of BPM, whether it be process documentation, change management, future mode of operations, process architecture. So different capabilities that we used to do there. So as part of that, I learned a lot. So I grew up the ranks of working as a process analyst before documenting, doing workshops, then moving more towards Lean Six Sigma, learning the process improvement skill sets. So through that, I worked in India. I worked in the Middle East for some time for a large
Mhm.
telecom company there in Southeast Asia, and that's how I came to Australia 6 years back. So my first engagement was here at a large insurance company. So I don't know if you have heard IAG. IAG is a big. So that was my first engagement in Australia. Worked for Cargill for some bit of time doing their shared services implementation. Then decided to move permanently to Australia. So that's how I started working in Vodafone. Vodafone, I had a dual hat of working as a uh, ARIS implementer. So I had the process architecture, and I was in charge of implementing ARIS there,
Yep.
and also running some improvement projects on the side. So your black belt projects on their digital channel, I used to help them with that. And NBN was an interesting journey as well. It was a big focus on BPM. So there I was working more with the delivery partners to see how we can improve their performance and
Right.
ultimately do the best for our customers. So mapping that end-to-end flow or journey within NBN was really insightful. And then recently I'm working with Medibank again in their process side of things and also insight. So how can we implement better process management? At the same time, how can we have the right insights that we can give to the business so that they can focus on the right KPIs and the right measures?
Yes.
So yeah, it's been around 15 years of working on the process side. So loving it. As I said, like I like business side and also a bit of technology side. So I think BPM gives me both. I'm in a very happy space. So that makes me really enjoyable. Like what I like my working in business side especially. So that makes it very easy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'd imagine that having such a diverse range of experiences working as a consultant, you would have come across many organizations that were adopting and implementing BPM. And I'm assuming you would have encountered a number of different challenges along the way, whether it was, whether it was culture, whether it would had something to do with executive sponsorship, whether you had process ownership in place, or a number of different things that are important when adopting and implementing BPM. But what would you say was one of the biggest, maybe noticeable challenges that an organization would face when adopting BPM? Or would you say that it totally depends on the business and they each faced completely different challenges?
Absolutely, Daniel. Like how everybody is different. Similarly, each company is different. They have their own different cultures, own leadership, own management style. So depending on what it is, there are of course challenges in each part of them. So I will just pick 2 or 3 examples where I've seen, the biggest challenge. So the biggest challenge I'll definitely say is sponsorship. So depending on whatever the company size it is or wherever it is, if you don't have the right sponsorship at the top, or if you don't have that intent for BPM, it's a lost case there itself. So working on that sponsorship is really important, and also it's dual for the, like, if you're going as a consultant, some of the times the sponsorship is already there, so you're just going and starting with the work. Sometimes you're called upon to advise them on which approach to take. There's an end goal that you have to reach, and you can take 5-6 ways to go about doing that. So advisory stuff is also important there in terms of sponsorship. And the third part is again showing that ROI to the sponsor, saying if we take this path, how are you going to achieve it, how much time will it take, and what will be the impact at the end of that. So that is something I think is really important to show. So the difficult, first, number one, I'll say, is definitely sponsorship. Second one, which I've seen, is sometimes is history. So some organizations have tried something in the past, whether it be a process mapping on a Visio, or they have done some workshops internally, because Lean Six Sigma and process has been there for a long time. So somebody have tried something and it didn't work that in that particular instance, and they say, okay, we have tried this in the company, this doesn't work. What do we do? What is the value add you guys would bring in? So that is something I find it a bit challenging, but it's very interesting as well to showcase how can we turn it around and say, okay, this is what we've done in the past. Let's try something which is forward looking, and let's see how we can solve the business, rather than thinking whether it's process based management or it's something else which is agile or anything like that. So that is the second biggest hindrance I've seen. And the third one is mostly about they have the BPM tool set in, but they're too stuck up on what is my process architecture, what modeling do I use. They're thinking too low level in terms of being sure of mapping each and every process within the organization, making sure that they're modeled to the right level. So that it requires a lot of investment and effort from everybody. And sometimes the stakeholders get what do you say, like they lose their interest because it is so detailed and they don't see the benefits immediately.
Yes, right.
So going from a higher level, which is sponsorship, to a history, and again something which is going too low level, is what I've seen in different organizations. So that is depending on each organization how it is, you have to elevate them. So if they're thinking too much at the top, then you have to bring it to the bottom. If you're thinking too low level, then you have to actually elevate it and bring it to the top. So that experience has, and of course you learn this through the ranks when you actually see different organizations. So that is something which I always take with me, saying first I assess the organization, how it is, what level it is, what kind of maturity it is, and then accordingly have a plan, saying, okay, we need to focus more on the routines and the architecture rather than sponsorship. Or if you're too below, we'll say, okay, we are thinking too below, let's talk about sponsorship, and let's go to different organizations or departments and see how do we work with that.
Yeah. Okay. And when you're talking about getting that sponsorship from that senior leadership team as being one of the biggest challenges, what are some of the objections that do come up? Because I think that's an important thing for BPM professionals to understand is what what keeps the executive team awake at night? What is important to them? Because if we don't understand what's important to them, how are we going to try and articulate the value of BPM using language that they want to hear? So what do you think some of the objections are that come up? I mean, obviously, apart from, you mentioned then history. So, we've tried this before, didn't work. Yeah.
So think about it. So if you put yourself in the CIO shoe or any of the executive shoes, what happens is their mind is filled with so many things in terms of technology changes, in terms of people changes, in terms of process changes. Technology, all the vendors are trying to sell them, saying, okay, we need to change. Like for example, a CRM system, they are changing every day. Your ERP systems, data insight systems, analytics systems, big data, artificial intelligence, all these things are going on. So where will you position the BPM as well into their mind, and how do we get that attention is something that you have to really think of, because at the end of the day you have a limited budget, so you have to see where you kind of fit in. First of all, understanding what is the CIO's pain points, or where does the business is actually moving. So that's where I said focus more on the business model, or what is the differentiator for that particular business. If my business is focused more on disruption or technology, or I'm changing every day, there's no point doing a BPM, large scale BPM engagement, because within 3 months they're going to change, and it's more of an innovative, like disruptive model that they're trying to implement. So there's no point of selling a BPM solution there.
Right.
But if there's an organization which is a large organization, it's looking to scale, it needs repetitive processes. They have some processes which are broken, but once they scale, they need that repetition at a faster rate. That is something where we can look at. So if that is a differentiator, we can definitely sell a BPM solution. If it's a larger organization which is there in multiple countries, they need a gold standard, a standard set of things to focus on. So that is something where we can send a BPM solution. So it all depends on what is the competitive edge that your company is focusing on. So if it is more of differentiator at the front, I will say focus more on your CRM systems and experience and marketing. If your thing is more about your operations, standardizing the core, like we say, so that is more adaptable for a BPM solution. So if there's a repetitive process, you want to reduce some cost for it, or you want to improve your time to market, then focus on that particular area. So understanding that high level pain point is number one. Second thing is you have to have a clear assumptions or a plan, saying this is how I will get to it. If I go to a CIO and give him a three-year-old plan, it's going to fail for sure, because unless that comes from unless it comes from the CEO, who's got an approval from the board, you can't have a 3-year plan where quarter and quarter you have your metrics to be performed. Then that is something that you think of, saying what is really important, how do I showcase a small win kind of a thing. So you focus on particular area, saying this is an operational part which is very repetitive, where we have a team of 50-60, where we can clearly see some productivity improvements, or we can see value in putting that end-to-end process together, and we can easily find 20% reduction or 30% reduction in cost. That is something you build your business case on, and you go with a clear intention of saying, this is what I'm going to do, this is how long it's going to take, this is what I need your help from. Again, if you say I need to do this end-to-end process, but I need you to talk to those 6 stakeholders, it's going to fail. One thing I've learned through experience is, you have, whenever you're speaking to an executive, you have to go down to the T and again go up and present in 2 slides that you've already spoken to these people and they're already on board. So getting that sponsorship from other parts within the business is also important before you go to that level. So going with a clear plan and assumptions, and then putting your people as well. So going with the right talent is absolutely necessary. So if you're building from scratch, you need to show that, okay, this is the help I need, this is the talent that they have done something, and this is what they've achieved, like a case study kind of thing in other places. Like we sell BPM, but there is a big difference in selling and implementing and executing, and executives understand that. So they are there because they have executed before and they know the challenges of executing. So as long as you show that right people plan, saying this is how it's going to work, it's very difficult to get that sponsorship. And the biggest point is every executive is forward looking. Like the stock markets or any of the company or the CEO, they're always forward looking. So if you tell them I'm going to map my processes and do an as is analysis for 1 year and then go into do year 2B, it's again going to be a big challenge, because what they're looking for is next quarter, what do I do? The next quarter, what do I do? So as long as you show the benefit, saying once I do that in this small space, I can actually be adaptable, be forward looking. I can change my whatever. If you're doing insurance claim systems, or I can sell more in the digital channel by doing this, that value, forward looking value is very important.
Yes, right. I think that's an important point you made there about, getting sponsorship from the lower levels, because I think that's something that maybe isn't given too much consideration, maybe, where, everyone's aware, obviously, that you need to get buy-in from the senior leadership. But what about the process practitioners, or the middle level management, the ones that are going to be adopting any changes, adopting any improvements? Because BPM's not just about identifying the weak areas, or the challenges, or the areas of inefficiency, but it's also about identifying improvements and changes to that, but then also implementing those changes. You do need to get those people on board that are going to be executing those process improvements and changes. And if it's someone that's been in the role for the last 5-10 years and they've always been doing the same thing, then it's not as simple as just giving them a new manual to follow. It's because there could be some kickback, there could be some objections there could be some, like, I've been doing this role for the last 5 years and you're coming in thinking you know better. So talk to us about, how do you get buy-in from that level, that they're the ones that are actually doing the work? How do you bring them along for the journey? How do you even include them in the journey? And how can you leverage, I guess, the knowledge and the information that's already stored in their heads?
That's a very apt question, Daniel. You're asking the right question and the difficult questions. So that is the biggest, the challenge when you're working in a mature organization, when you go in there and they already have certain way of doing things their way, and how do we get buy-in from them? So in my experience, or whatever I've read or learned through my courses, there are only two ways how people work in corporate. So either they do something which their boss has told them to do, so that is coming from top down, or they do something because they see value in it, which will make their life easier. So if you can answer any of those two questions, you can get them to support you. So number one is easy, in terms of, if you have got the top level sponsorship, then their boss, you get that to flow from top down. You drop some names, you have a meeting, you have a workshop, and then it makes things easier. Second thing is, and the most difficult part is, how do we show value to them? How do we make their life easier? That I think is very difficult to address, because like I said, if they have history, they said, oh, we have tried before, I wasted my time, I don't want to do it again. So how do you cater to that? Is, again, you have a look at how that process will work for them, or how that end-to-end things will work for them. Then you bring in an accountability aspect to it. So for example, if I'm, say, selling if I'm a digital store, I have orders coming into my website, I have middleware technology teams processing that order, I have fulfillment doing that order.
Yep.
If I go to fulfillment, I say, like, your KPI is like, if we do this, my digital order sales will increase. They don't care about it, because for them it is more about their fulfillment process should be completed as soon as possible, and it should be green, because that is their KPI.
Right.
Similarly, if I go to a digital person, I say, our revenues are not getting fulfilled, because out of 100 orders that come to digital, only 90% are being delivered, 10% are not being. He's like, I don't care, because my KPI, when I measure it at the start, is how many digital sales I have done through my portal. I don't care whether the customer gets my product or not.
Right.
I'm not counted on that. So this is the conversation that I actually had in different organizations, right? So again, how do you make their life easier? Is when you bring that end-to-end picture and say, guys, this is how the flow is working, and this is how we will help the company achieve its revenue targets if we focus on the right KPIs. So getting that picture of, yes, this is your KPI, so you kind of mark that, but this is also the company KPI which works. So once you bring that and saying who's responsible for that KPI, you bring that accountability. And then once you bring that accountability, so these things are again easier in terms of saying, in communication always, you can say, It's good for the customer. Everybody agrees. It's great for the customer. It's good for the organization. Everybody agrees. But everybody wants to hear what is in it for me.
Right.
So once you bring that accountability, saying in that end-to-end process, this is the person accountable for it. So who's accountable for actual revenues? So we have to get that person. Again, that person will be a higher up person. So you kind of have to do that initial slog of putting that end-to-end process. But once you have that, you say, this is my end-to-end process. My focus is revenue. I think you are accountable for revenue. Can I make you accountable and make sure that this process works fine? So again, you get that top level sponsorship or that person to come to your workshop, and then everybody will follow the line. So the person who's selling on the digital side will understand, yes, I need to sell more products, but I also need to make sure that the revenue is generated from the customer, like it actually reaches the customer and they start using the product.
Right.
Similarly, fulfillment will understand that, okay, out of 100, I'm delivering 95, five orders are being lost in the system. I need to make sure that they don't get lost. Or I need to talk to my process owners who are before my process to make sure that I get all the orders what they're telling me to do. So again, it's like a chicken and egg story, but you have to do the slog of that end-to-end process, focus on the KPIs and the measures, find an accountable person who is responsible for that particular KPI, and then have that sponsorship or the plan coming in, and then that's how things rolling. And there is again one end-to-end process. Similarly, you can go more and more and more.
Yes, right. And I'm assuming that you would have, been part of doing this in a number of different organizations and successfully doing it. And so I think that's one thing that senior leadership would be interested to understand and learn is, well, where has BPM been put into practice, put into place, and it's delivered significant value? I mean, you've already been talking about how, start small, start on a small level, deliver that value, prove to them on a very particular project or a very specific area of the business that, yes, understanding, managing, and improving our business processes does work. But there would be some organizations that aren't at that point yet. And so they're looking out there to be like, well, show me where BPM is working in another organization. How is it delivering value? So do you have a couple of examples that maybe you could share where you've seen BPM deliver significant value to an organization?
Absolutely. So I've been to a lot of organizations. If I have to name organizations, I've worked in NBN. NBN was big promoter of BPM kind of bill. Like they have the CEO Bill Morrow, who's a big promoter of process-led management. So I had seen a lot of good instances where they have actually implemented pretty well. I had worked in previous organizations in the Middle East, and IAG itself, like even though it was small in two particular areas, but they had done it really well. So it makes things easier. I'll just answer the question how it makes things easier. So, and the difference I've seen in a less mature organization versus a more mature organization.
Right.
So the biggest difference that comes is in terms of is adaptability and that mindset. Like everybody says culture and mindset. It's easy to understand, very difficult to change. So once you actually see the benefits, then you understand the real importance of it. So if you see again, like I said, if you go to a mature organization, they are more future looking. So because they have that, like BPM is kind of building that stamina. So if I build a stamina, tomorrow I have to do a cross country run, or I have to do cross training, or I have to do weights, I'm set for all those things. Whatever challenges I have, I can do that. But if today I don't have that stamina, I will not be able to do any of those things. So BPM is all about, you have set up yourself to a bit of a maturity, so that tomorrow whenever something changes, I am adaptable to it. So I can easily change my model, or I can easily bring in my teams together to work and talk to each other and change it. Like how brilliant it is to have a process architecture. You have all the processes, you go click on it, you'll see what your colleagues are working on, you sit together and drive that improvement. So that is like an ideal thing for any organization, any COO, to quickly come in and saying, okay, I need to change this, and within 2 or 3 months I can actually see the change on the ground, rather than you see a change, you come, you start mapping your as-is processes, you understand how we're doing things currently, then you have a workshop, and then you kind of wasting time. So in terms, when the organization is scaling or there is growth involved, it is always non-linear. It's never a straight line saying, okay, we are going to improve it and our customers are going to buy our products every day, whatever 3%, and we're going to go like that. It's never. It's going to go left, it's going to go down, and it's going to go up, straight up. So to doing that, if you have a mature organization in BPM, it makes it really, really easy for you to adapt. COVID is a great example. Like in NBN, we like within 1 week it changed, saying I was working on a project which was more on the delivery partners, so which involved high risk in terms of health and safety of the technicians, right? Because they would go to customer's house. What if a customer's COVID positive? So then instead of starting from scratch saying what are the interaction points or where the technician goes, because the organization had all the processes mapped, it was easy for us to communicate to the delivery partner saying these are the areas where there's a touch point of a technician going to a customer's house.
Right.
This is where we need to give your PPE kit. So this is where we need to have the script in the SMS changing. Also, we have our partners, which is your retail service providers, who actually send the technician. So informing them that these are the particular areas where your technicians will interact with people. So you need to send us communication. And all this could be done within 2 weeks or 3 weeks because we had that kind of flexibility.
Yeah.
Other thing is change management. There are always changes happening. There are two things: merger, it's easy if they're mature, that mindset is already there, the culture is already set in. So they kind of, it's easy to merge things together to really change your business model and may change your business structure. If you have everything documented or have everything set in terms of your KPIs and everything, makes it very easy to communicate. So it's kind of having a universal language within your organization, because each department speaks its own language. BPM and IC is the common language in terms of your KPIs and your processes, which makes it very easy for teams to talk to each other.
Yes, yeah. And I think when you give us an example like that, it makes so much sense to the people listening, where it should be sparking ideas for those that are listening. It should be sparking ideas in your organizations how you can practically use BPM, because I think BPM, it covers so much of business and it can penetrate so many different areas of business. Sometimes it's a little bit nebulous about but when you give us an example of like that, where people can see, this is how this organization has implemented BPM, this is what it looks like on a practical sort of day-to-day level, it makes total sense. It makes a lot of sense why having that transparency, why having that visibility does lead to being able to adapt really quick to changing environments. And I had a conversation actually with someone else from NBN a couple of months back, and a few of the things that you're saying is triggering my memory there, because they were talking about Bill Morrow and how he, if someone had a problem if a problem was presented to Bill Morrow, the first question Bill would ask them is, what is the process? Before you bring a problem to me, what is the process? If you don't understand the process, I need you to go away. First understand what the process is, and then come back to me, and then we can find a solution to the problem. And I think that's such a powerful message there, that, if you don't know the process, if you don't have a grid or your baseline where you're starting from, then how are you going to make any improvements or changes to something that you're actually not too sure what's going on at the moment anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is where the sponsorship comes in, right? Sponsorship is not just about signing a document and saying, okay, I just go ahead and do it. It's about modeling that behavior. So you make it authentic, you make it visual, saying, okay, in any conversation that you're having, you're actually referring to a process map, you're actually asking what are your KPIs, and you're making it your routine kind of a thing. It's not like one software in 6 months you come and say, okay, let's put all the process maps together and have a look. It's a routine of having that daily conversation or weekly conversation on KPIs. How are we doing? How can we improve? I think that is where the biggest value comes. So you gave a perfect example of organization which is more about operationally focused, and they wanted to improve, and the approach that they use is process led management. So I think that worked out really, really, really well.
Yes.
So yeah. So my learning is all about, like I refer back to earlier what I said in terms of what is the business model. If I want to move my operations, NBN wanted to scale. It was scaling more than Facebook at a time, where instead of 10,000 or 40,000 customer getting connected every day or every week onto the network. So at that scale, you need to be operationally very savvy. So that is where your BPM comes in. So it's all about wherever you want to change your operations, or you want to make a gold standard of your operations where you're scaling in different organizations, I think the single biggest benefit will be a BPM based approach to your management.
Yes, yep, definitely. And when we're talking about obviously the impact that COVID had on on all organizations. For some organizations, it was a real tough time, a real tricky time, especially when an organization that didn't have transparency or visibility on their processes, made it difficult to adapt and change, especially when maybe some of their supply chain processes were completely disrupted and they had to go to a completely different model or way of working. And then for other organizations, it probably worked in their favor, and just that the current environment did mean that for whatever reason it did benefit the business. But that's obviously one huge driver of business understanding, managing your business processes, business process management. Another one that I'm aware of is obviously like regulations and audits, and being audited on. Do you know exactly what goes on in the business? Do you understand what your processes are? Do you understand where the risks are, and do you have controls associated with those risks? Different things like that. What do you see as being the biggest drivers for BPM?
COVID is definitely, has changed the game. And I feel like anything, any tool, any concept, or any theory that enables more collaboration, I think that is going to sell more in the future, or that is how the future will look like. We are getting more and more siloed, uh, working at homes, and even right now working from homes in maybe a same location, but maybe later on in the future you'll be sitting anywhere in the world. So collaboration is where there is definitely value coming in. So BPM enables that collaboration. So collaboration, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, we can talk to each other. BPM lets a department talk to another department. Otherwise, they will never talk. Like when was the last time when you're working in a corporate where you just thought, okay, let me just see how my call center process works? Never in your life, unless there is work involved, you will never look at it. So this enables so COVID will definitely have changed the way of working, and this way of working has to be more collaborative. To make an organization more collaborative and agile, you need to have this concepts of agile ways of working, and you have to have this concepts of BPM, where you can actually have some concrete things to look at and how and work with people. Workshop, I love workshop. That's going to be more difficult. You have to do everything online, so your BPM tools makes it easy for everything to be done on the tool. Everything is cloud based now, so that also really helps to do that. So it has definitely accelerated. At the same time, from a business perspective, the costs are getting higher and higher for organizations, so they need to work on those aspects as well, saying how do I create more value as well as reduce some costs part of it. So I think from a technology point of view, because we're going on the cloud and there will be more investments in this collaborative type of tools and techniques, I think BPM is definitely something that is going to be helping these organizations, and it's going to be there forever. Like for example, I know that in the future, BPM can be a skill that can be redundant. Like I have read in some of your blogs or something, where people say, oh, it's kind of true in a way where some tasks of it will get redundant, the automation will take care of it, but the human side of things will always be needed. So for example, your insights can be automated, your documentation can be automated, but how do I improve my business continuously? How do I work with the other teams, other departments, other organizations, and how do we improve them? That is never going to die. So that is something which should always be useful, and the tools will definitely keep changing. uh, the theories will keep changing, the business model will keep changing, but the concept of management or process based management is always going to be there.
Yeah.
So that I think is definitely game changing for us, and it's good to be in this space, especially after the workplace has changed so drastically. So I think
Yes.
all the BPM practitioners are in a good place at this point in time.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And talking about the future, what do you think the future of BPM looks like over the next 2, 3, 5 years? Obviously, there's a new technology popping up that has been, quite popular at the moment, or there's a lot of conversation happening around process mining and RPA and different technologies like this. And, I think for some organizations, it's going to be that it's going to bring a lot of value to them. And for other organizations, maybe they're diving into technology before they've got other sort of more fundamental foundational things in place. But yeah, I guess looking forward at the next 2, 3, 5 years, where do you think organizations should be investing their time, effort, and energy? And are you noticing any trends that are happening?
Yeah. So process mining and RPA, they're definitely there. They've been there quite some time. So it's like I said, there are always two aspects to our organization. One is standardizing the core. So whatever core operations, repetitive tasks, you kind of standardize it, automate it, make it as easy as possible. And also you have the differentiation at the front. So how do you customize more for my customers? How do I make sure that my customers at the center of all my processes? How do I give them the biggest value on, and how do I make it very relevant for them? So these two areas always work hand in hand. In the last decade, we have seen more about the standardization of the core. So your CRM systems, your ERP systems, your BPM, whatever your process mapping or Lean Six Sigma wish to do is always very organizational centric. So is to see how do we improve our processes, how do we improve our things. So that is something which will continue. Process mining will help in that, RPA will help in that, maybe some machine learning and everything, all this, they will have some algorithms for improvements from based on whatever is working inside the system. That is going to continue. That is one part. The other part where I think the BPM focus will shift on is more on the customer side, or more how can I change my experience for the customers? How do I customize them for them? So that is where human-centered design will come in. Design thinking is it's kind of an approach which is there. So how do I merge my business processes with all those experience what the customer has? Because ultimately your customer experience, they have the empathy, they have the emotion, but how do we bring it back to our organization and see how does it connect to our core and how do we deliver that service to them? So that is where I think the future is going to shift more from being an employee like an organization centric process company to a customer centric process, which we feel, which everybody's talking about it, which we know is happening, but I think in the future it's going to be more and more and more of customization. So we need to put in our efforts also to always focus on the customer and see how we can change that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the current jobs, definitely, if you're not updating yourself, will get redundant. For example, today we have people who document processes, we have people who map out KPIs and everything. In the future, I'm sure the tool will just spit out, this is a process, whatever is happening inside the system. I think the systems are intelligent enough to spit it out, saying this will be your process, this is how you can improve. Those kind of capabilities are definitely evolving. So as long as you keep yourself updated on the business side of things, saying how do I make it relevant for my customers, how do I make it sustainable, how do I make it what do you say, more fun for my customers. So all those kind of things is where BPM practitioners will kind of need to focus as well.
Yeah. Okay. And let's just say that there's someone listening to this conversation right now, and they're in an organization where maybe they haven't, they're very early days in their process maturity, and they haven't been, they don't have any processes documented, and so they're about to embark on this journey. Where should they be focusing? We've spoken about identifying your critical processes and understanding, well, what are the most important processes? Are they the ones relating to the customers? Are they your core processes? Should they be trying to understand the senior leadership's objectives and focusing on processes that directly impact that? But where does one start when they know BPM can bring value, but sometimes it can be like, this is quite overwhelming?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question. That is something which we face day in, day out. Whenever you go to any client side or you're doing something internal in an organization, it's like, where do I start? Because there are so many things, where should I focus on? So there are 2, 3 aspects to it. One is somebody directs you to it, saying, okay, I am a sponsor, I need to do this process, you start doing it. Maybe you can take that. But I think a more scientific approach is looking at, like I said, standardizing the core, like what is the main core operation process. And these are usually in your call center or in your operational team, which is working across 6 7 teams, and you're doing fulfillment, or you're doing, or like whatever, order management or something like that, or claims management. So normally you look at that process. Always look at 5 or 6 departments. Now, if you're just focusing on one particular department, you will find value, but that value will not be that great, because already people within that department are working on improvement. So I've seen functionally teams work very well. They have the improvement working in that mindset. People kind of forget the end to end. So look at five
Yeah.
or six departments that the process is working through, and then start with that and say, okay, this is the process which is flowing from this department to this department. This is where I see the gaps in my KPIs, how we are measuring it, and this is where we can improve. Once you have that business case, I think we are good at capturing, we are good at creating value. So I think BPM and folks, we create value out of nowhere. We say, okay, this is the end-to-end process, this is the KPI, this is how we can improve. That's excellent. But how do we capture some of those values? That is where we get lost, or that is where a lot of people get lost, saying, how do I actually capture it? I've documented it, but what is the point of it unless I have an improvement framework, or I say this is how I'm going to improve, or this is how I'm going to have a daily stand up? You are not going to capture the benefits of what you have actually documented. So you start capturing that, and that's how you show it to your executive. That's how you start, and then say, okay, this is what I've done in this particular end to end. I'll do 8 end-to-end processes across my organization, and that's how you start slowly building. So it's not about implementing a tool saying, everybody say, though, BPM, let's get a tool, let's start documenting, or let's get some consultants, they will tell us how to do it. It's not going to work. You have to start at one end-to-end process, look at it, capture that value. You have to showcase, you have to sell it, sell the
Yep.
solution in the organization, saying, because we have documented it end-to-end, we meet every 2 weeks, and this is how it has resulted in more sales, or in more cost reduction, or more efficiencies. Now I can focus more on proactive stuff rather than reactive stuff. Such kind of language will definitely help sell that. So don't
Yeah.
focus more on documentation. I think that should be a 2 day job, but focus more on what do I do with the document, and how do I change my routine of
Yeah.
managing that process.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I like what you mentioned there about got moving from reactive to proactive, because I think that's, a lot of organizations do um, spend a lot of their time in the reactive space,
Yeah.
reacting to different problems and challenges that come up, as opposed to being proactive about, well, how are we pioneering in this space? How are we creating the future? It reminds me of a conversation I had with Michael Roseman, who's the, I think, head of innovation at QUT. And he comes from a BPM background. And we had a similar conversation about reactivity versus being proactive, and that, if you're not if your organization isn't the one creating the future, then one of your competitors will create that future, and you're going to have to play by their rules. So, giving that. Make sure that you're leaving space and leaving room to be proactive, and not just react to different things that are coming up. So I think that's a really important point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally
Mm.
agree to that.
Mm.
And
That's
like I
good.
said, forward looking, and you can only be proactive. Everybody wants to be proactive, but you can only be proactive unless you reach that maturity. Otherwise, it's very difficult for you to be proactive.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Right.
have to build that stamina and maturity for you to be adaptable and proactive.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And for those that are listening right now, that maybe they're learning about BPM for the first time, or maybe it's something that they're very early on in their journey. Where would you recommend they go if they want to learn more? Maybe they're in an organization where they're the only person that's responsible for understanding and managing their business processes, which I'm aware that there are very large organizations with very tiny teams. And so sometimes it could feel quite overwhelming. Where do we go to learn more about BPM? Who do I speak to? Or where do I go to find information? Because there's information out there on the internet. Sometimes it just can be a bit overwhelming. Where do you begin? Where do you start? And what is actually applicable to my current situation and circumstance? So yeah, where
Yeah.
should someone go if they want to learn more about BPM?
Yeah. Again, a very relevant question, Daniel, because yeah, even I struggled through my journey on what to look at, where to look at when I actually need it. So, and what I've seen is depending on where you are in a career track, you have to look at different resources. So, for example, if I'm a process analyst, I'll be more interested in what is a BPM notation look like, what are the different tools, how I can learn those tools,
Right.
mapping those tools. So, the resources I look at is more about going to those particular vendors. I think if you look at any of the BPM tool vendors, if you go to any of the website, they'll have all those things listed. So that is a good resource. There are a lot of resources on the internet on how do you actually start modeling, what is BPMN, what is different notation, and you can learn a bit about that. If you are a process architect, it if you want to go to that level, or if you're a process analyst and you want to go to a process architecture level, then looking at industry frameworks is something really important. If you're in telco, you have to look at ETOM, which has all the processes listed. If you are in a different industry, they always each industry has their own standards for architecture. So it can be a business architecture, which should align to your process architecture. So you have to start doing that. Again, a lot of BPM vendors have staff literature on process architecture. That's really important. There are certain books as well which you can read for process architecture. There are textbooks, but in terms of practicality, I think it's best to listen to people and talk to as many people as possible. For example, look at process pioneers. There are a lot of process architects already spoken on this topic, so you can learn from them, or you can go to conferences, speak to them. So that is one aspect of it. And the third part is more about the business side of things. So how do you build that business case, or how do you influence your stakeholders within an organization to go towards the BPM path, or go towards the operational improvement or operational efficiency and all those kind of areas. So that is the third aspect of it. That is where you can look at. So I've seen a lot of books in process-based management. So Roger Trigger, he's written certain books. So you kind of read those things. It's more about thinking, mindset, culture change. So you kind of focus on that. Again, I think third aspect is really difficult to learn, because that is where you have to really customize it for your organization. So it's really important for you to understand what are my organization's differentiators. What are the competitive advantage? Are they going for the edge of being low cost? Are they going for the edge of being innovative? Now, whatever is that language, you start speaking that language and build that business case. So that is where you again go to your conferences, you talk to people. If you are in a telco industry, talk to other telcos. If you are in a healthcare industry, talk to other healthcare. And not necessarily each in the same industry. You can always learn from different other industries as well. But yeah, a difference between a good practitioner and a great practitioner is speaking that language of the business and understanding the business model. Everybody can, you can learn the process side, architecture side, technical side of things can be learned, but that language of speaking to the business and understanding the differentiators and tuning or customizing your language in that particular area is something that you have to learn through experience. So talk to all the gurus in process. Roger and NBN, Ankur Jain was one of the gurus who kind of changed that mindset. So and I've seen all the big leaders are always open to share their knowledge. So feel free to reach out. Uh, Again, listen to this Process Pioneers episodes, and I'm sure you will also help connect a lot of people if they can reach out to you to share your knowledge and connect with the right people. So those are some resources.
That's great. That's really good. Well, Manish, I just want to thank you for sitting down and having this conversation with me today. And for those that are listening to this episode, likewise, if you do want to follow up with Manish and learn more about his background and his experience, obviously I think we've been talking for around 45, 50 minutes today, which only allows us to really scrape the surface. But if you have been left with questions in your mind about BPM, or maybe how you want to follow up with Manish with how did he do this, or how does he go about doing this, then feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn and reach out and pop your questions down in the comments section below as well, because there's a community of BPM professionals and practitioners that want to encourage and support one another and collaborate. So I'd encourage you to do that. But Manish, thanks for sitting down with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure talking to you and sharing some of the knowledge. So thank you for having me.